It all started with a broken-down car and a man who refused to take advantage of a stranger. Grayson Cole was just a mechanic, living day by day, fixing what was broken, both in cars and in life. He never expected anything to change. Then she walked in, Emily Dawson, a woman who seemed out of place in his world until fate decided otherwise. What neither of them knew was that this one moment, this one act of honesty, would set off a chain of events neither could predict. A story of love, trust, and the unexpected ways kindness can change a life. Before we begin, if you love heartfelt stories about second chances, love, and the power of doing the right thing, make sure to subscribe and stay with us till the end. Now let's begin The Honest Fix, a journey of love, integrity, and fate. This version is tight, engaging, and naturally leads into the story while making the call to action feel effortless. Let me know if you'd like any final tweaks. Poor mechanic repairs a single mom's car unaware. She's the CEO of the company about to hire. Him, Grayson Cole, wiped the grease off his hands with an old rag, exhaling as he glanced at the clock on the wall. It was nearly closing time, and today had been just like every other. Long hours under the hood of rusted cars, the scent of oil and gasoline clinging to his clothes, and the ever-growing list of unpaid bills in the back of his mind. He didn't mind the hard work. In fact, he loved it. There was something deeply satisfying about fixing things, about taking what was broken and making it whole again. If only life worked the same way. He had just started locking up when a sputtering engine echoed through the dimly lit garage. A silver SUV limped into the parking lot, coughing and rattling as if it had just run a marathon it was never meant to finish. Grayson hesitated. He could pretend he didn't hear it. He could turn off the lights and go home, let tomorrow's problems wait for the morning. But that wasn't who he was. With a resigned sigh, he set his toolbox back down and walked toward the car. The driver's side door swung open, and a woman stepped out, frustration evident in the way she ran a hand through her auburn hair. She was dressed in business attire, a fitted blazer, dark jeans, and heels that didn't belong anywhere near an auto shop. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice carrying a mix of exasperation and mild embarrassment. "My car, well, it's making noises I don't think cars are supposed to make." Grayson smirked, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Yeah, I heard. Sounds like it's protesting against the idea of running." She let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. "That's one way to put it." She extended a hand. "Emily Dawson." Grayson hesitated for a moment before taking it. Her grip was firm, confident, not the delicate handshake he expected from someone dressed like her. "Grayson Cole," he replied. "Let's take a look." He walked around the car, listening, assessing. Years of experience told him this wasn't just a minor issue. He popped the hood, shining a flashlight over the engine. A mess. The belts were worn, the oil was dangerously low, and the radiator looked like it hadn't seen maintenance in years. "When was the last time you got this serviced?" he asked. Emily sighed. Does a car wash count?" Grayson chuckled, shaking his head. "Not exactly." She crossed her arms, leaning against the car. "So, is this fixable, or should I start browsing for new cars on my phone?" "It's fixable," Grayson said, though he could already tell it wasn't going to be a quick job. "But it's gonna take some time." "How much time are we talking?" she asked, glancing at her watch. "A couple of hours at least," he estimated. Emily frowned. "I was supposed to be at an important meeting in an hour." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Guess that's not happening." Grayson could see the frustration on her face, but there was something else too. Fatigue. She looked like someone who had been carrying too much weight on her shoulders for far too long. "Tell you what," he said. "I'll get started right now. You can wait inside, grab a coffee if you want." She studied him for a moment, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. You'd really stay late just to fix my car? Grayson shrugged. Wouldn't feel right leaving you stranded. Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe even a little skepticism. People like him didn't just do things out of kindness. At least, that's what she had been conditioned to believe. All right, she said finally, but I insist on paying extra for your trouble. Grayson shook his head. I charge for the work, not the inconvenience. Emily tilted her head. That's rare, he smirked, already diving under the hood. So I've been told. An hour and a half later, Grayson had made decent progress. Emily had wandered inside the garage's small waiting area, scrolling through emails on her phone, occasionally stealing glances at him as he worked. She found herself intrigued by the way he moved, not just with efficiency, but with care. He wasn't just fixing a machine. He was restoring something that someone depended on. It was a kind of dedication she rarely saw in her own world. After another 30 minutes, Grayson wiped his forehead and walked over to her. All right, you're good to go. Emily looked up, surprised. Already? Already? He raised an eyebrow. Lady, I just gave your car a second lease on life. She laughed, standing up. Fair enough. She reached for her purse. How much do I owe you? Grayson rattled off a fair price, and she counted out the cash, adding an extra $100 IG bill on top. Grayson frowned. This is too much. Consider it a tip. I don't take tips. Emily narrowed her eyes. Why not? Because I do this job to help people, not to squeeze them for extra cash. Emily studied him, curiosity deepening. You're really serious about that, aren't you? Grayson leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. Look, I've been in situations where I had no choice but to trust a stranger to help me out. Not everyone would, but the ones who did, they made all the difference. I figure the least I can do is pay that forward. Emily held his gaze, and for the first time in a long while, she felt something unfamiliar. Not admiration. She had admired people before. Not gratitude. She had been grateful many times. No, this was something else entirely. She had spent years building walls around herself, navigating a world where kindness often came with strings attached. But here was this man, this mechanic with grease on his hands and calluses on his fingers, who was simply good, not because he had to be, but because he chose to be. She tucked the extra bill back into her wallet. Thank you, Grayson. He nodded, stepping back. Drive safe, Emily. She got into her car, turning the key. The engine purred to life smoother than it had in years. As she pulled out of the garage, she glanced in the rearview mirror. Grayson was already walking back inside, ready to call it a night. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that this was far from the last time they would see each other, and that by the end of it all, neither of them would ever be the same again. Emily Dawson couldn't shake the feeling as she drove away from the garage. The smooth hum of her newly repaired SUV should have been the only thing on her mind, but instead it was him, Grayson Cole. There was something about him, something rare in a world where every transaction had an unspoken expectation attached. He had helped her without knowing who she was, without trying to impress, without even considering the idea of taking more than what he had earned. That kind of integrity was nearly extinct in her world. She glanced at her watch. 8:52 p.m. The meeting she had rushed to attend was long over, and oddly enough, she didn't care. Her assistant, Claire, had already texted her updates. No major issues. Board agreed on the proposal. We'll finalize next week. Good. It meant she had time to think. The truth was, she had gone to Grayson's garage for more than just a car repair. She had been looking for something real. In the past few months, she had grown disillusioned with the corporate world, with its ruthless deals and empty smiles. As CEO of Dawson Tech, a billion-dollar company specializing in electric vehicle innovation, she was surrounded by people who told her what she wanted to hear, not what she needed to hear. And that scared her. Her father, William Dawson, had built the company from the ground up with a philosophy of honesty, but in recent years she'd begun to question if that value still had a place in the business world. That was why she had come to this small town on the coast, why she had driven an old SUV instead of one of her high-end company cars. She had wanted to see if people like Grayson still existed, people who did the right thing even when no one was watching. And now she had her answer. Grayson stretched his sore muscles as he stepped into the garage, coffee in hand. The morning light streamed through the open doors, highlighting the faint layer of dust on the workbenches. Business had been slow lately. He was barely making ends meet, and the bank had already sent him 2 warning letters about late payments on the lease. Still, he refused to cut corners. That was his rule. He was about to get started on a transmission rebuild when the sharp ring of the garage phone interrupted him. "Yeah," he answered gruffly. "Good morning," a smooth professional voice said. "Am I speaking with Grayson Cole?" He tensed. The voice sounded like someone from a law office or a collection agency. "Who's asking?" "My name is Claire Whitmore. I work for Dawson Tech. Our CEO, Emily Dawson, would like to schedule a meeting with you." Grayson frowned. "Emily?" "Yes. She mentioned that she met you yesterday." Grayson leaned against the workbench, confused. What could a billionaire CEO possibly want with a small-town mechanic? Yeah, I remember her. Look, if this is about the repair, she already paid." "It's not about the repair," Claire interrupted, her tone polite but firm. "Ms. Dawson has a business proposition for you. Would you be available this afternoon?" A business proposition? Grayson was tempted to say no. He didn't trust corporate types. He had seen too many local shops swallowed whole by faceless companies. Their profits more important than the people who ran them. But there was something about Emily, something different. "Where?" he asked cautiously. "Downtown at Dawson Tech headquarters. 3 p.m. Shall I put you down for a meeting?" Grayson hesitated, then exhaled. What did he have to lose? "Yeah, I'll be there." Grayson stepped into the glass-walled skyscraper of Dawson Tech and immediately felt out of place. His jeans were stained with oil, his boots worn from years of hard labor. The reception area was sleek, modern, filled with people in sharp suits. He didn't belong here, but he wasn't the type to back down. A young woman with blonde hair approached him. "Mr. Cole?" "Yeah," she smiled. "I'm Claire Whitmore, Ms. Dawson's assistant. She's waiting for you." Grayson followed her down a long corridor, feeling every pair of eyes on him. They probably thought he was some vendor or a janitor who had wandered into the wrong place. When Claire opened the door to Emily's office, Grayson's first thought was that it wasn't what he expected. It wasn't the oversized, extravagant space he associated with CEOs. Instead, it was warm and filled with personal touches. Family photos, books, a small plant by the window. Emily stood by the desk, dressed in a navy blue blouse and tailored pants, looking every bit the powerful businesswoman, but when she smiled, it wasn't fake. It was real. "Glad you came," she said, gesturing for him to sit. Grayson took a seat, crossing his arms. "Still not sure why I'm here." Emily folded her hands on the desk. "I'll get straight to the point. Yesterday, I saw something in you that's rare in the world I live in. Integrity. You didn't take advantage of me when you could have. You didn't try to upsell me or pretend my car had more issues than it did. You did the right thing simply because it was right." Grayson shrugged. "It's just how I do things." "Exactly." She leaned forward. "That's why I want to offer you a job." Grayson blinked. "Come again." Emily smiled. "I need someone like you. Someone who knows cars inside and out but also believes in honesty. Dawson Tech is expanding into electric vehicles, but we need experts who actually understand traditional mechanics to bridge the gap. You could be a part of something bigger, something that matters. Grayson frowned. Sounds nice and all, but I'm not a corporate guy. I'm not asking you to be, Emily said. I'm asking you to be yourself. To bring that same honesty and hard work to something new. You'd have full creative input, a team at your disposal, and a salary that would take care of whatever financial issues you're dealing with. Grayson exhaled slowly. It was a hell of an offer, but it also felt too good to be true. He met her gaze. Why me? Emily hesitated before answering, and for the first time he saw something vulnerable in her expression. Because I need to believe that good people still exist, she admitted. Grayson was silent. The room felt charged, like something unspoken was hanging in the air between them. Finally, he leaned back, running a hand through his hair. I'll think about it, Emily nodded. That's all I ask. As Grayson walked out of the office, his mind was a storm of thoughts. He had come expecting some kind of scam, some corporate nonsense. Instead, he had found something else entirely. And, whether he liked it or not, his life was about to change forever. Grayson Cole had never been one to overthink things. He was a man of instinct, a man who fixed problems with his hands, not by sitting around debating what-ifs. But as he drove back to his garage after the meeting with Emily Dawson, his mind was anything but settled. She had offered him a job, not just any job, but one that promised security, financial stability, and a chance to be part of something bigger. It was the kind of opportunity most people in his position would jump at without hesitation, and yet he wasn't sure he could trust it. Corporate life wasn't his world. He didn't wear suits. He didn't sit in boardrooms. He worked with grease-stained hands and calloused fingers, fixing what was broken and making things run again. He didn't belong in a sleek office surrounded by people who had never known a hard day's work. But then there was Emily. She wasn't what he had expected from a billionaire CEO. There was no arrogance, no air of superiority. She had listened to him, really listened. And when she had said she needed to believe that good people still existed, there had been something real in her voice. Grayson shook his head. It didn't matter. He had a life here, even if it wasn't perfect. The garage had been his father's before him, and though business was slow, it was his home. And yet, how much longer could he hold on before it all fell apart? The next morning, Grayson arrived at the garage early, hoping a few hours of solid work would help clear his mind. The familiar scent of oil and metal filled the air as he unlocked the doors and stepped inside. But instead of customers, he found a man in a suit standing by the front desk, holding a folder of papers. Grayson's stomach tightened. He knew that look. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. The man adjusted his tie, glancing around the shop with an expression of mild disinterest. "Mr. Cole, my name is Alan Green. I'm with Metrobank. I'm here to discuss your outstanding loan payments." Grayson exhaled through his nose. He had been expecting this, dreading it, but expecting it. "We've already sent multiple notices," Alan continued, flipping through the folder. "You're 3 months behind. If we don't receive payment soon, we'll have no choice but to begin foreclosure proceedings on this property." Grayson clenched his jaw. He had done everything he could to keep up. He had worked long hours, taken every job that came his way, but it wasn't enough. Business had slowed, and he had refused to charge people more than what was fair. And now he was paying the price for his honesty. "How much time do I have?" Grayson asked, his voice tight. "A month, maybe 2, if you can make a partial payment. But after that..." Alan tucked the papers back into his folder. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cole, but the bank can't make exceptions." Grayson nodded stiffly. He didn't beg. It wasn't in his nature. But as the banker walked out of the garage, a sick feeling settled in his gut. He was out of options. Grayson spent the next few hours trying to focus on work, but the numbers kept running through his head. No matter how he looked at it, there was no way he could come up with the money in time. And then Emily walked through the door. She was dressed more casually today. Dark jeans, a blouse, a hint of perfume that didn't belong in a garage. Full of oil and sweat, but her presence was still impossible to ignore. Grayson wiped his hands on a rag. Didn't expect to see you again so soon. Emily smiled slightly. I figured you might need more time to think about my offer. Not much to think about, Grayson said, leaning against the workbench. I'm not a corporate guy. I'm not asking you to be, she replied, stepping closer. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are, someone who knows machines, who understands how things work, and who isn't afraid to speak the truth. That's rare where I come from. Grayson studied her, trying to gauge if this was just another rich person's experiment, a way to prove something to herself. You really think I belong in your world? He asked, skeptical. Emily hesitated, then shook her head. No, but that's exactly why I need you, because you see things differently. And we need that. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, as if sensing something unspoken in him, Emily's gaze softened. You don't have to say yes, but at least consider it. Grayson sighed. He didn't want to admit it, but part of him was considering it. And the other part of him? The one that had just been reminded that his garage, his father's legacy, was slipping through his fingers. That part of him was desperate. That night, Grayson sat in his small apartment above the garage, staring at the stack of overdue bills on his kitchen table. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. His father had built this place from nothing. He had poured everything he had into it, and Grayson had always believed it was his duty to keep it running. But what if that was just pride talking? What if by clinging to the past, he was stopping himself from moving forward? Emily's offer wasn't just about money. It was about a new beginning, a chance to build something different. But was he ready to leave behind everything he had ever known? The weight of the decision pressed heavy on his chest, and for the first time in a long while, Grayson didn't have an answer. Grayson Cole wasn't sure when he had actually made the decision. Maybe it had been the moment he had looked at the past due notices on his kitchen table. Maybe it had been when he'd seen the banker's cold, indifferent expression reminding him that no one was going to cut him a break just because he was a good guy. Or maybe, just maybe, it had been when Emily Dawson had looked at him with something resembling belief, as if she actually thought he could belong in her world. Whatever the reason, Grayson found himself standing outside Dawson Tech headquarters the next morning, dressed in the only button-down shirt he owned. It was wrinkled, his jeans were still the same worn pair from yesterday, and he had debated turning around twice before finally walking through the sleek glass doors. If this was a mistake, at least he was about to find out quickly. The reception area was just as polished and modern as before, filled with people who clearly lived in a world of power meetings and high-stakes deals. Grayson stuck out like a sore thumb, but he had never cared much about that. A sharply dressed young woman, Claire Whitmore, Emily's assistant, approached him with the same professional efficiency as before. "Mr. Cole," she said, giving him a once-over, her expression unreadable. "Glad to see you accepted the offer. Follow me." Grayson exhaled through his nose. Had he accepted the offer? He wasn't sure yet, but he was here. Claire led him down a long, sterile hallway, the soft click of her heels contrasting with the heavier thud of his work boots on the tile floor. "You'll be meeting with the project team today," she informed him. "They've been briefed on your role, though I should warn you, many of them were skeptical about bringing in an outsider." Grayson smirked slightly. "That makes two of us." Claire didn't react, just opened the door to a conference room, where several people were already seated. Grayson immediately sensed the tension. The room was filled with engineers, Executives and analysts, all in crisp suits, their gazes shifting toward him with barely concealed doubt. He could feel the weight of their expectations, or lack thereof. At the head of the table, Emily stood. She was dressed in a tailored blazer, her confidence radiating effortlessly. "Glad you could make it," she said, motioning for him to sit. Grayson took a seat, leaning back in the chair. He wasn't one to get rattled easily, but there was something about the way these people looked at him, like he was some kind of social experiment, that made his skin itch. Emily gestured toward a man sitting 2 seats down. "Grayson, this is Richard Hale, our chief engineer." Richard was in his early 40s, with sharp features and an even sharper gaze. He adjusted his cufflinks before speaking. "Mr. Cole," Richard said smoothly, "I understand you're—" "What?" "A small town mechanic?" Grayson raised an eyebrow at the condescension in his tone. "Something like that," Grayson said evenly. Richard nodded, as if confirming his own assumptions. "And you believe you have something to contribute to an advanced engineering project?" Grayson smirked. "Well, I'm guessing you've never actually had oil on your hands before, so yeah, I might know a thing or two that you don't." The room went silent. Emily didn't intervene. She just watched, waiting to see how this played out. Richard's lips pressed into a thin line. "All right then," he said. "Since you claim to have experience, why don't you tell me what's wrong with this design?" He slid a blueprint across the table. Grayson glanced at it, immediately recognizing the schematics for an electric engine prototype. He studied it for a few seconds, then leaned back. "You're putting too much strain on the drive unit," he said simply. "You'll burn out the motor faster than it should. My guess, you're using an aluminum housing instead of reinforced steel to save weight. But you didn't account for the extra torque, so the stress fractures are going to kill your efficiency within a year." Silence. Richard's jaw tightened. "That's an interesting assumption, but our calculations show—" "Your calculations are wrong," Grayson cut in. "Your numbers might look great on a spreadsheet, but out in the real world, that motor's gonna fail sooner rather than later. If you don't believe me, put it to the test. Run a high-load stress simulation and see what happens." Richard's face darkened. Emily, on the other hand, smiled slightly. "Let's do that," she said, looking at her team. "Run the test." The engineers exchanged glances before nodding. The meeting continued, but Grayson knew he had made his mark. After the meeting, Emily found Grayson in the hallway, his hands shoved in his pockets. "Not bad," she said, leaning against the wall. Grayson shrugged. "That guy Richard, he's going to try and get me fired before the week is out." Emily smirked. "Probably," Grayson exhaled, shaking his head. "Look, I don't know if I belong here. These people, they see me as some dumb grease monkey, and maybe they're right. Maybe I should just go back to my garage before I make a fool of myself." Emily's expression softened. "Do you really believe that?" Grayson hesitated. No, he didn't, but admitting that out loud, that was harder. Emily straightened, looking at him seriously. "Grayson, I didn't bring you here as some charity case. I brought you here because you see things differently, because you tell the truth, even when people don't want to hear it. That's exactly why you do belong here." Grayson looked at her for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then finally, he nodded. "All right," he said. "Let's see how long I last." Emily smiled. "That's the spirit." As Grayson walked away, she watched him go, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Because maybe, just maybe, bringing Grayson Cole into this world was the best decision she had ever made. Grayson Cole had never been one to back down from a challenge, but Dawson Tech was testing him in ways he hadn't expected. It had been 3 days since he started working alongside the engineers, and every moment felt like walking into a lion's. Then most of them either ignored him completely or made subtle digs at his lack of a formal degree. Richard Hale, in particular, seemed to have made it his personal mission to prove that Grayson didn't belong. Every meeting, every discussion, Richard found a way to undermine him, questioning his ideas, dismissing his observations, making it clear that he thought Grayson was nothing more than a glorified grease monkey. Grayson could have walked away. The thought had crossed his mind more than once, but every time it did, he remembered Emily's words. "I brought you here because you see things differently, because you tell the truth, even when people don't want to hear it." So he stayed, and now he had a chance to prove that he wasn't just here by luck. The engineering team gathered in the testing lab, a vast, sterile space filled with state-of-the-art equipment. In the center of the room sat the prototype electric motor, the same one Grayson had pointed out issues with during his first meeting. Richard stood in front of the group, arms crossed. "All right, let's put Mr. Cole's theory to the test." One of the engineers, a young guy named Ethan, set up the simulation. A screen flickered to life, displaying real-time data as the motor was pushed to its limits. For the first few minutes, everything seemed fine. Then the numbers spiked. The heat levels rose faster than expected. The torque output fluctuated. Stress. Fractures began to form exactly where Grayson had predicted, and then failure. The motor sputtered and died. Silence fell over the room. Grayson folded his arms and looked at Richard. "Told you!" Richard's jaw tightened, his face carefully blank. "We'll need to rerun the test to confirm." Emily, who had been watching from the back of the room, finally spoke. "We don't need another test, Richard." Grayson was right. "The design needs to be adjusted." Richard turned to her, clearly trying to salvage his authority. "With all due respect, Miss Dawson, one test doesn't mean—" "It means enough," Emily interrupted, her voice firm. "Grayson saw a problem no one else did, and he was right. I suggest we all start listening." A murmur ran through the engineers. Some looked impressed. Others, like Richard, looked furious. Grayson, for his part, didn't gloat. He just shrugged. "Guess I'm not just a grease monkey after all." Emily fought back a smile. Later that evening, Grayson found himself alone in the workshop area of Dawson Tech, working on one of the revised designs. He wasn't an engineer, but he knew engines, and whether the team liked it or not, he wasn't going anywhere. The sound of heels clicking on the floor made him glance up. Emily was standing there, arms crossed, watching him. "You didn't have to humiliate Richard like that," she said, but there was no real bite in her tone. Grayson wiped his hands on a rag. "He had it coming." Emily exhaled, shaking her head. "You're not making many friends here." "I'm not here to make friends." She tilted her head, studying him. "Then why are you here, Grayson?" That was the question, wasn't it? He could have said he needed the money. He could have said he had no other options. But the truth was, he wanted to be here. Somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about just keeping his garage afloat. He actually cared. "Because I know what I'm doing," he finally said. "And whether they like it or not, I can help." Emily nodded slowly. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, unexpectedly, Emily walked over and picked up a wrench from the workbench. Grayson raised an eyebrow. "You know what to do with that?" She smirked. "I used to watch my dad work on cars when I was a kid." Something about the way she said it made Grayson pause. There was something deeper there, something she didn't talk about often. "You and your dad close?" he asked carefully. Emily hesitated. Then she set the wrench down, her expression unreadable. "We were," she said. And just like that, the moment passed. Grayson didn't push. He just nodded. "Well, if you ever want a refresher course, you know where to find me." She smiled softly. "I'll keep that in mind." As she turned to leave, Grayson watched her go, feeling something shift inside him. This job had started as just a way to survive. But now, it felt like something more, and he wasn't sure what to do about that. Grayson Cole had always believed that machines were easier to understand than people. Cars, engines, tools, they all followed a set of rules. If something was broken, you found the problem, fixed it, and moved on. People were messy, complicated, and sometimes they didn't even know what they wanted. That thought had been running through his mind far too often lately, because lately Emily Dawson had been occupying more space in his thoughts than he was comfortable admitting. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, though she was in a way that felt effortless. It wasn't just that she was successful, though the way she commanded a room was impressive. It was something else. It was the way she listened to him when no one else did. The way she challenged him without ever making him feel small, and the way, despite her perfectly put-together exterior, there were cracks beneath the surface, cracks he wanted to understand. Grayson had never been part of a team before, at least not in the way Dawson Tech operated. He was used to working alone, trusting his own instincts, but over the past week something had shifted. After the stress test incident, some of the engineers had started taking him seriously. Ethan, the younger engineer, had even begun seeking him out for second opinions. Richard, of course, was still as dismissive as ever, but that didn't bother Grayson. What did bother him was how often Emily found excuses to check in on the project. Just observing, she would say, leaning against a workbench, watching him with those sharp, unreadable eyes. Grayson wasn't stupid. He knew she could have sent anyone to monitor progress, but she kept showing up, and the more she did, the harder it became to ignore the way the air felt different when she was around. Late one evening, after a long day of revisions, Grayson was one of the last people to leave. He had stayed behind, double-checking the updated motor design, making sure they had actually fixed the problem this time. He was just stepping into the elevator when Emily appeared, clearly just finishing up her own work. "Burning the midnight oil?" she asked, stepping inside. Grayson smirked. "You're one to talk," she chuckled. "Fair enough." The doors slid shut, and for a few moments they rode in comfortable silence. Then the elevator jerked to a stop. The lights flickered. The hum of movement ceased. Grayson pressed a button, but nothing happened. Emily let out a soft sigh. "Well, that's just great." Grayson smirked. "You do this on purpose?" Emily shot him a look. "Yes, Grayson. I sabotaged the elevator just to trap you in here with me." He chuckled, leaning against the wall. "Well, if that's the case, I'd say I'm flattered." She rolled her eyes, but couldn't quite hide the hint of amusement. A minute passed, then another. The silence grew heavier, and before Grayson could stop himself, he asked, "So, what's your deal?" Emily blinked. "My deal? Yeah. You're obviously loaded. You run this whole empire, but something tells me this isn't really the life you wanted." For a moment she didn't answer. Then she sighed, glancing up at the ceiling as if debating how much to say. "My father built this company," she said finally. "It was his dream, and for a long time I thought it was mine too." Grayson watched her carefully. "And now?" She hesitated. "Now, I'm not so sure." That surprised him. Emily Dawson, not sure of something? That didn't fit. Before he could press further, the lights flickered back on. A moment later, the elevator lurched into motion again. Emily straightened, her mask slipping back into place. "Looks like we're back in business." Grayson studied her, knowing the moment was gone, but something had shifted between them, and he wasn't sure they could ignore it much longer. The next morning, Grayson was back in the shop, buried in blueprints, when Emily walked in. He didn't even look up. "Let me guess, here to observe again?" "Actually, I came to ask you something." That got his attention. He set down his pencil and met her gaze. "I'm listening." She took a breath, as if preparing for something. "Big, how would you feel about running your own division?" Grayson froze. Excuse me? I'm serious, she continued. You have a way of seeing things no one else does. You don't just understand machines, you understand how they should work in the real world. I want you to take charge of our practical application team. Grayson stared at her. I don't even have a degree. I don't care. This is insane. Emily smiled. So is turning down an opportunity like this. Grayson leaned back, running a hand through his hair. Why are you doing this? Because I believe in you, she said simply. And that was the craziest part of all. Grayson Cole sat in the dimly lit workshop, staring at the blueprints Emily had left with him. His own division. It sounded ridiculous, like something out of a movie where the underdog gets an impossible break. But Emily Dawson was serious. Decker. Woman had looked him in the eye and told him she believed in him. And damn if that didn't shake him more than he wanted to admit. He wasn't used to people betting on him. For most of his life, the world had taught him that hard work didn't always pay off, that people like him, guys who worked with their hands who didn't come from money, had to fight for every inch they got. He had been okay with that. He had made peace with it. But now someone wanted him to have more. And he didn't know if he was ready for that. The next morning, Grayson walked into Dawson Tech, feeling the weight of his decision pressing down on him. The engineers were watching him differently now. Some were still skeptical, but others, like Ethan, seemed to respect him in a way they hadn't before. Richard Hale, however, was not one of those people. As soon as Grayson entered the lab, Richard was waiting for him, arms crossed, eyes filled with barely disguised contempt. I heard about your promotion, Richard said coolly. Congratulations. Grayson didn't like his tone. Thanks. Richard took a step closer, lowering his voice. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you don't belong here. Grayson exhaled through his nose. You're right. I don't belong in an office, wearing a suit, pretending I'm something I'm not. But I know machines. I know how things work. And whether you like it or not, Emily thinks I can help. Richard's eyes flashed at the mention of her name. You think she actually believes in you? He scoffed. She's using you, Cole. You're nothing but a charity case, a way for her to prove to herself that she's still connected to ordinary people. Grayson clenched his jaw. He didn't want to let Richard get under his skin, but the words hit too close to home. Was that all this was? Some rich woman's way of easing her conscience? He had seen the way Emily looked at him, the way she actually listened when he spoke. That wasn't pity, that was something else. But the doubt had already crept in. Richard smirked, sensing he had landed a blow. Walk away now, Cole, before she gets bored of this little experiment. Grayson didn't say anything. He just turned and walked out of the lab. Emily found Grayson sitting outside the building later that evening, staring at the skyline as the city lights flickered on. She knew something was wrong. She had seen the storm in his eyes earlier in the day. The way he had been quieter than usual. Without asking, she sat down beside him. Richard got to you, didn't he? She said softly. Grayson let out a dry chuckle. Guy's got a talent for pushing buttons, she sighed. What did he say? Grayson hesitated, then looked at her. That I'm just a charity case, that you're using me to prove something to yourself. Emily's expression darkened. That's not true. You sure about that? She turned to fully face him, eyes fierce. Grayson, if I just wanted to prove a point, I could have hired anyone. I could have picked the most qualified, the most experienced, but I didn't. I chose you, because you see things differently, because you say what needs to be said, because you matter. Grayson held her gaze, searching for any sign of dishonesty. He found none. She was telling the truth. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emily let out a quiet laugh. You? No, you're not the only one questioning everything. Grayson raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? She exhaled, staring at the city lights. I've spent my entire life following a path that was set for me. Dawson Tech, the boardrooms, the deals, it was all part of the plan. But lately, I've been wondering if this is what I really want. That admission surprised him. You'd walk away from all this? He asked. Emily hesitated. I don't know, but meeting you, seeing the way you fight for what you believe in, it makes me wonder what I've been fighting for all this time. Grayson felt something shift between them, something undeniable. Before he could think too much about it, he reached over and took her hand. Emily didn't pull away. For the first time in a long time, she let herself just be. And for the first time, Grayson Cole wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was exactly where he was meant to be. Grayson Cole had never cared much about what people thought of him. He lived by his own code: work hard, be honest, don't take shortcuts. It had served him well enough, even when life had thrown more punches than rewards. But now he cared. Because Emily Dawson believed in him, and for the first time in a long time, he had something to prove. Yet deep down, he couldn't shake the unease that Richard's words had planted. She's using you. You're just a charity case. He didn't believe that. Not really. But doubts had a way of creeping in when you least expected them, and they were about to be tested more than ever. The next morning, Grayson walked into Dawson Tech, determined to ignore the noise and focus on his job. The practical application division was finally getting off the ground, and he was ready to prove to himself and everyone else that he deserved to be here. But when he arrived, something felt off. The usual buzz of the workshop was muted. People who weren't looking at him directly. Some whispered, others avoided his gaze altogether. Grayson frowned, his instincts kicking in. Then Ethan, the young engineer who had started warming up to him, approached. He looked uncomfortable, rubbing the back of his neck. "You should see this," he muttered, handing Grayson a tablet. Grayson took it, eyes narrowing at the headline on the screen. Dawson Tech CEO's mysterious favor, small-town mechanic, lands executive role with no experience. Below, it was a photo of him and Emily in the elevator, just before the doors had closed. It didn't look like much, just a casual conversation, but with the right angle and framing, it could be twisted into something else entirely, and, of course, it was. The article hinted at nepotism, favoritism, and worse, suggesting that Emily had given him the job for reasons that had nothing to do with qualifications. Grayson clenched his jaw. He had been in this world long enough to know that the truth didn't always matter. Perception did. And right now, the perception was ugly. Grayson stormed into Emily's office, tablet still in hand. She looked up from her desk, surprised. "You see this?" he demanded, tossing the tablet onto her desk. Emily glanced at the screen. Her calm expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "Yes," she said simply. "That's all you have to say?" Grayson scoffed. "This makes it look like I got this job because of—" He exhaled sharply. "Whatever they're implying." Emily set the tablet down. "It's a hit piece, Grayson. Someone wants to discredit you. And me." "You think I don't know that?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "But it's working. The guys in the lab are already looking at me like I don't belong. Now they have proof." Emily stood, walking around the desk until she was in front of him. "Do you honestly think I would let some gossip column dictate who I hire?" Grayson hesitated. "No, but it's not just about you. This is my reputation too." Emily's voice softened. "Then we fight back. We do the work. We prove them wrong." Grayson held her gaze. She meant every word. But then something clicked in his mind. "You knew this was coming, didn't you?" Emily didn't answer right away, and that was all the confirmation he needed. Grayson took a step back. "You knew," Emily exhaled. "I had a feeling someone would try to undermine you. I just didn't know it would happen this fast. Grayson let out a dry laugh. So this was a test? Emily shook her head. No, Grayson. I wanted you here because you deserved to be here, but I knew people would push back. I should have warned you. You think? His voice was sharp now. I just walked into that lab and found out that half of them think I'm sleeping my way into this job. Emily's face hardened at that. That's not what's happening, and you know it. Do I? Grayson muttered. Because right now, it's getting real hard to tell. For the first time, Emily looked hurt, and Grayson hated that he had put that look on her face. But this was exactly what he had been afraid of. He had spent his whole life earning respect the hard way, and now one article, one photo, and suddenly none of it mattered. Emily took a deep breath. Grayson, do you trust me? The question stopped him cold. Did he? She had given him this opportunity. She had stood up for him, but she had also known this was coming, and she hadn't told him. Grayson shook his head. I don't know. And with that, he turned and walked out. Emily sat down, her hands gripping the edge of her desk. She had never seen Grayson look at her like that before, with doubt, and she hated it. Claire walked in, closing the door behind her. We traced the article leak, she said quietly. Emily already knew. Richard? Claire nodded. He gave the photo to the press, leaked internal emails to make it sound like you fast-tracked Grayson without proper vetting. Emily closed, her eyes for a moment forcing herself to breathe. He's trying to push Grayson out, Claire added, and if Grayson leaves now, it'll just confirm the rumors. Emily nodded slowly, already knowing what she had to do. We don't let that happen, she said. Her voice was calm, but inside she was furious because no one, not Richard, not the press, not anyone, was going to take this away from Grayson. Not if she had anything to say about it. Grayson Cole had been in fights before, not the kind where fists flew, though he'd had his fair share of those growing up. No, the kind that stuck with him were the ones where he fought for something that mattered, for his garage, for his father's legacy, for the belief that a man's word still meant something. But this was a different kind of fight, one he wasn't sure how to win. Grayson spent the rest of the day avoiding Dawson Tech. Instead, he went back to his garage, the one place that still felt like home. He stood in the middle of the workshop, breathing, in the scent of oil and metal, running his fingers over the workbench he had spent years perfecting. This place had built him. It had taught him everything he knew, and yet, for the first time in his life, he didn't feel at peace here. Because whether he wanted to admit it or not, a part of him had already started belonging at Dawson Tech, and that part of him hated that he had just walked away. A familiar voice broke through his thoughts. You gonna hide here forever? Grayson turned. Emily stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her eyes unreadable. You shouldn't be here, he said. What if the press finds out? They'll have a field day. Emily stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. Let them. Grayson scoffed, shaking his head. You don't get it. I'm not like you, Emily. I can't just what? She interrupted. Ignore what people say. Walk away because it's easier. Grayson exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his hair. I don't care what people say about me, but I do care about what they say about you, and right now they're tearing you apart because of me. Emily's expression softened. You think I care about that? You should, he said. You have a whole company to protect, and right now you're risking everything for the right thing. Emily cut in firmly. Grayson stared at her. I don't walk away from people I believe in, she continued. And I sure as hell don't let people like Richard win. Her voice was steady, unwavering, and damn it if that didn't make something in Grayson's chest tighten. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Then Emily took a step closer. You once told me you believe in fixing things, she said. So fix this, Grayson. Grayson held her gaze, and just like that, he knew. She wasn't giving up on him, so he sure as hell wasn't going to give up on her. The next morning, Grayson walked into Dawson Tech with purpose. He wasn't there to prove himself to Richard Hale or anyone else in the company. He was there for Emily and for himself because he deserved to be here. He walked straight to the lab, ignoring the stares, the whispers. Richard was waiting for him, a smirk on his face. "Didn't think you'd show." "Up." Grayson stopped in front of him, voice calm. "You wanted me gone, didn't work." Richard chuckled. "Give it time." Grayson took a step closer. "Let's cut the crap, Richard. You don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with Emily. You hate that she sees things differently, that she doesn't play by the same damn rules you do." Richard's smirk faltered. "You tried to use me to take her down," Grayson continued, "and I let you get in my head. But not anymore." Richard's jaw tightened. "You think one speech is going to change anything?" "No," Grayson admitted. "But facts might." At that moment, the lab doors opened and Emily walked in. Behind her, Claire, holding a folder. Richard's face paled. Emily's voice was calm, too calm. "We traced the leak, Richard." Claire stepped forward, handing Grayson a set of documents. He scanned the first page, emails from Richard to the press, feeding them. False information. Grayson looked up. "You set me up. You set her up." Richard's expression twisted. "This is a power move, nothing more." "No, Richard," Emily said. "This is the end." Security entered the lab, and just like that, Richard Hale was escorted out of Dawson Tech. That evening, Grayson stood on the rooftop of Dawson Tech, watching the sunset over the city. Emily joined him, standing beside him in comfortable silence. "You didn't have to come back," she finally said. Grayson smirked. "Yeah, I did." She turned to face him. "Why?" Grayson met her gaze. "For the same reason you fought for me," he said. "Because it's the right thing." Emily smiled. "So, does this mean you're staying?" Grayson exhaled, looking at the city lights. He thought about his garage, his past, and then he thought about this place, about her. He turned back to her, a slow smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah," he said, "I'm staying." And for the first time in a long time, Cole felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. Grayson Cole had never believed in fate. He believed in hard work, in grit, in getting your hands dirty to make things right. But standing on the rooftop of Dawson Tech that night, with Emily Dawson beside him, he couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, some things were meant to happen. He had walked into this company as an outsider, doubted at every turn. He had nearly walked away more than once, but now, he had earned his place, and more than that, he had earned her trust. The next morning, the atmosphere at Dawson Tech was different. For the first time since Grayson had arrived, people looked at him without suspicion. Richard Hale was gone. His influence, his politics, his toxicity, all of it wiped clean, and in its place, something new, something real. Emily had reinstated Grayson's position, this time with full authority over the practical application team. No more questioning his credentials. No more whispering behind his back. Now it was up to him to prove that her belief in him wasn't misplaced, and he planned to do just that. Later that evening, after another long day in the lab, Grayson found himself back on the rooftop, watching. The city lights flicker in the distance. This time he wasn't alone. Emily appeared, 2 glasses of whiskey in her hands. She handed him one. "Thought you might need this," Grayson smirked, taking it. "Are we celebrating something?" Emily sat down beside him, tucking her legs beneath her. "Maybe." They clinked glasses, the night air cool but not cold. For a few moments neither of them spoke. Then Grayson glanced at her. "So, what happens now?" Emily exhaled, setting her glass down. "Now, we build something that lasts." Grayson studied her. "You really mean that, don't you?" She nodded. "I don't make promises I don't intend to keep." He leaned back against the railing, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "Neither do I." Emily turned to him, her expression softer than he had ever seen it. "I know," she said, and somehow those two words meant more than anything else. The conversation shifted. They talked about the company, about the future, about the weight of expectations. And then, somehow, they started talking about the past. Emily stared into her glass. "You asked me once if my father and I were close." Grayson nodded, remembering the night in the garage when she had dodged the question. Emily exhaled. "We were, but not in the way most people think." Grayson waited. "He built this company from the ground up," she continued. "I admired him for that, but he also expected me to follow his path, exactly as he had planned it." Grayson frowned. "And if you didn't?" She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Failure was not an option." Grayson shook his head. "Sounds like a hell of a burden." It was. She looked up at him. "Still is." Grayson was quiet for a moment, then said, "You don't have to be him, you know." Emily blinked, caught off guard. "You're not William Dawson," he continued, "and you don't have to be. You can run this place your way." She swallowed hard. "And what if my way isn't good enough?" Grayson smirked. "Then you'll fix it, just like everything else." Emily let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. "You make it sound so simple." Grayson held her gaze. "Maybe it is." Something shifted in the air between them. It had been building for weeks, unspoken but undeniable, and now, in the quiet of the rooftop, with nothing left between them but truth, Emily leaned in, and Grayson met her halfway. The moment their lips met, Grayson knew this was inevitable. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was slow, deliberate, certain. Emily's fingers curled against his shirt, pulling him closer, and he let himself fall into the moment. She tasted like whiskey and quiet strength. And for the first time in a long time, Grayson wasn't thinking about the past or the future. Just this. Just her. When they finally pulled away, Emily's eyes searched his, almost as if she was waiting for him to second-guess this. He didn't. Instead, he smirked. "About damn time," Emily laughed, shaking her head. "You're impossible." Grayson grinned. "And yet here we are." She rolled her eyes, but he could see it. The way her guard had finally dropped. For once, she wasn't the CEO. She was just Emily, and Grayson, he was exactly where he wanted to be. Neither of them said the words. They didn't need to. This wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of something real. Grayson had always been good at fixing things. But this was something neither of them needed to fix, because for the first time in their lives, everything felt exactly right. For the first time in a long time, Grayson Cole wasn't running from anything, not from uncertainty, not from doubt, and certainly not from the possibility of happiness. Because standing beside Emily Dawson, watching the sun rise over the city, he realized something he had never let himself believe before. He was exactly where he was meant to be. A year later, the sound of welding torches and the low hum of machinery filled the massive garage space. But this wasn't Dawson Tech. It was something entirely new. Grayson stood in the middle of a newly constructed auto research facility, hands on his hips, surveying the work in progress. The place was alive with motion. Engineers, mechanics, and technicians working together, testing new electric vehicle prototypes, fusing old-school mechanics with cutting-edge technology, and the sign above the entrance, Cole Dawson Innovations. Grayson smirked, shaking his head. "Still can't believe you put my name first." From behind him, Emily's voice was light with amusement. "I had to give you at least one win in this partnership." Grayson turned to face her, a playful glint in his eye. "Partnership? You mean dictatorship?" Emily crossed her arms, raising an eyebrow. "Says the guy who insisted on personally testing every engine himself," he grinned. "What can I say? I don't trust anyone else with my work. Emily sighed dramatically. You're impossible. And yet, here you are. She rolled her eyes, but there was warmth in them. Because this was home now, not just for Grayson, not just for Emily, for both of them. The road to this moment hadn't been easy. There had been struggles, growing pains, moments where Grayson wondered if he was really cut out for this. But Emily had never let him doubt himself for long. She had fought for him when others doubted. She had stood beside him when things got difficult, and in return, he had done the same for her. Together, they had built something that wasn't just a company, it was a vision, a place where innovation wasn't just about technology, but about honesty, integrity, and purpose. And somewhere along the way, they had built something even more important, something personal, something neither of them had expected, but neither of them could live without. One evening, after another long day at the facility, Grayson and Emily sat on the hood of an old rebuilt truck, watching the city skyline in the distance. Grayson, ever the restless one, tossed a wrench in the air, catching it effortlessly. "So," he said casually, "you think this place is gonna work?" Emily smirked. "You mean the company, or us?" Grayson turned his head to look at her, something soft in his gaze. "Both?" Emily didn't hesitate. "Yeah," she said. "I do." Grayson studied her for a moment, then reached into his pocket. Not for a ring. Not yet. Instead, he pulled out a small, rusted bolt, the same one from her old SUV, the one he had fixed all those months ago. Emily blinked in surprise. "You kept that?" Grayson turned it between his fingers. "Reminded me of the day everything changed." Then without ceremony he placed it in her palm, curling her fingers around it. "I don't have a fancy speech," he admitted. "I don't have a big plan, but I do know this. I want you in my life, for the long haul." Emily looked at the bolt in her hand, then back at him, and for the first time in her life she didn't have to think. She just knew. She leaned in, pressing her lips softly against his. When she pulled away, she whispered, "For the long haul." And that was all. The answer he needed. The future wasn't perfect. There would be challenges. There would be moments of doubt. But that didn't scare them, because together they had already built something stronger than fear. A business built on trust, a partnership built on respect, and a love built to last. And as they sat under the stars, two people who had once been strangers, brought together by a broken car and an act of kindness, knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the best things in life aren't planned. Sometimes all it takes is one honest man, one good woman, and a leap of faith, and that was more than enough. And that's the story of The Honest Fix, a journey of love, integrity, and how one simple act of kindness can change everything. Now I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let me know. I always enjoy seeing how far this story reaches. If you enjoyed this heartfelt journey and want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means everything. It keeps these stories alive and brings more uplifting narratives to life. Thank you for watching, for being part of this journey, and for believing in the power of a good story. Until next time, stay inspired and take care. This version keeps it engaging, warm and natural, while smoothly encouraging interaction and subscriptions. Let me know if you need any tweaks.